this is Candice Fox. Join me this week on One Final Twist.
This week we've got Candice Fox, a new to me author. Just for the record, I am mad that I have not read you so far, and now I'm like, oh, I've got another one. Who is known for writing crime fiction that is as it's an emotionally sharp as it is suspenseful. Um, we've got flawed characters, fractured relationships, and just a very fast-paced ride that I really couldn't get enough of. Red Belly Crossing. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that for anybody who's watching or listening?
Sure, of course. So Red Belly Crossing, it's the story of two brothers who are assigned to the same murder case. They are estranged. Russell and Evan had a fight 5 years ago, which essentially, it has filtered down from shared trauma in their family. And so Evan's assigned to the case and he finds his older brother there as the lead detective. So things are tense, not only in their relationship, but also in this small town. Red Belly Crossing is a place that's full of snakes. It's a valley. It is mysterious and dark, and a young freelance journalist has been murdered there at the pub. The two brothers find that this contemporary murder leads back in time to other things that have happened in the area. So it's a mystery. It is a family drama story, and it's also inspired by a true crime that my family was connected to. So
The
That would probably be our next question is what
yeah.
was the nugget that started this?
the
I
she
don't want to. I don't want to leave you guys sitting there going, and then what happened? And then what happened? And I just go rattling off. So I'll leave it to you to ask about it. But there's so much in this book. It's hard for me
the
to not just burst out with words.
there is, and Teresa hasn't finished, so she hasn't read the afterword yet, but
Okay.
I have. And this it was so wrecking. I mean, there's a big reveal about 50% through the book. There's a huge reveal, and then there's even more. This book just does not stop giving until you read the afterward. I mean, it was so intense. The first little bit, it's more of a slow burn. We're getting to know Russell and Evan, their father, the Evan's family, Russell's family, and then it just boom, and it just does not, it doesn't let up. The relationships that you developed between the brothers and how they don't see eye to eye. One is, and they're both police officers. One is kind of a not a goof off. I mean, but he's made some mistakes, and he's paying for them by not being a detective yet.
Mm,
And you have Russ, who is hard as nails, by the book, gets every bad guy that he goes after. There's so there's such difference in the two characters. It's like
mm.
day and night. And but the ultimate goal at the end is to find the bad guy. I don't want to say too much about the bad guy, but you did an excellent job
Oh, thank
with
you.
this
Thank
story.
you. Thank you. Yeah, the whole thing, aside from the true crime that brought me into this, which I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, but what it is, I in all of my books, I think there is a theme that runs through there about families. There's always a thread in there that has some commentary on families, because I think I'm still trying to work out what the hell happened in my family. um, my mother had 4 kids and then she adopted 2, and so there were 6 of us in the house permanently. And then she fostered 155 kids as I was growing up. So she created a household that was a swirling hurricane of kids and all of their problems. And then she essentially had created this furnace or melting pot, which was out of her control. So she was not able to deal with anyone's problems. And she was just putting small fires out all the time. And so all of us are adults now, and we have all come out of that household dealing with problems in life the way that we dealt with them inside that furnace. So my role in the family was the smart, capable one. Mum
Mhm.
would say, "You're smart, you're capable, you don't have any problems." And so I kind of internalized that, like, I don't have any problems. If I have problems, I deal with them myself. And Russell is a little bit like that, he's sort of swallowed all of the problems that he's ever had in his life until they come bursting out and destroy his whole marriage and his whole family life and everything. And now he has to clean everything up. That's kind of me. I have 2 sisters who their role in the family was to have constant problems. And that was how they got attention, was by acting up, and and that was how they drew my mother all the time. So this book is a commentary on how people can come out of the same childhood but have a very different conception of how that childhood went, and then also be completely different people. And so there's 6 of us now, and 2 are estranged, and there are fractures within the 4. These 2 don't speak to each other. That one's trying to estrange himself. And we have a long held tradition in my family of something happening and someone saying, "I will never speak to you again." And then they never do. And there's generations of that,
Yeah.
of people saying, "On June 9th, 1974, that's the last time I saw her, and you make sure you tell me if she dies, because I'm going to go there and bury her." And that is a sort of a thing with us. So in this book I've really brought it out, and tried to play with it in my own sandpit.
The family dynamic, and so when I did the research for this interview too on some of your other stuff, that does play out, and it seems like it stands out in reviews. Is that kind of like your therapy?
A little bit. I also have actual therapy. My therapist drives a Ferrari paid for entirely by me, I reckon. It's just and that's one of the major things, I think. The difference in my family is that I was sneaking off at about 12 years old and calling what we have here in Australia the kids helpline, and I was getting secret counseling, and I put myself into counseling at high school. And when I was out of high school, I just, got therapy for my whole life. So I've ended up, better than some other people in my family, who only got therapy for the first time in their 40s. But yeah, when I write it out, I'm speaking as different characters sometimes and saying things that I would never say. Certainly the father figure in this book says some stuff, and Russell fires back in a way that I never have, or I've seen as being pointless in the real world. You can fire back and see the effect of it in fiction. It's kind of like a fantasy. The wonderful thing about fiction is that I get to live these lives that I never could have. One of them that I keep living is being a detective, which I just know that in real life I would make a terrible detective. I'm not organized. I'm not, I cry whenever someone yells at me, which would be a terrible skill to have as a detective. And I'm very, I leap to assumptions, which would be terrible. You'd have to be very open-minded as a detective. I watch true crime and I go, it was him. Look at his face. You can tell, and that's not good. That's not how you do it.
Talk a little bit about the town itself of Red Belly. I know it's fictitious, but the town itself becomes such a character in the
Mm-hmm.
book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how many small towns have you come across in Australia that are like this?
So Red Belly Crossing is actually based on a real town that I frequent, and the real town is lovely. It has a beautiful pub. It has peacocks. There's a river. There's a big bridge, and but it's one of those places where everyone is watching you and you don't necessarily know it. Because you're not there all the time. There's sort of 300 people who are there all the time, and you come in and you think you're kind of anonymous. And it revealed itself to me a few months ago when I was there, and I came in to the pub at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it had been raining, and I'd been helping a friend with something. So I was all wet and hungry because I'd been helping her put up a shed. And so I went in and I had a bowl of chips and a glass of wine, and I sat by the fireplace and I just dried off. And the bartender served me and everything. Anyway, I went away and I came back 3 hours later, and I was buying a drink at the bar. And the woman's a different bartender. She said to me, "You're going to have dinner?" And I said, "Oh, no, no, I'm all right. I'll just have the drink." And she goes, "You only had chips earlier. That's not dinner." And I'm like, were you were you guys back there talking about me and my chips that I had? Like, because you're not the bartender that served me. It was a different bartender and she's not here. So obviously they were talking about me or observing me like very closely. It's a beautiful and inspirational place, and it actually inspired the title of this book. So my daughter is 6, she was 5 at the writing time of the writing of this novel, and my husband and I, we were all there, and it was a blistering hot day, and we were down on the river beach, which is a wide beach, with a brown river with all the tree tannins in it and the bridge and this huge valley that goes all the way up. You feel like you're walled in all the way around. And my daughter said, "Guys, look." And we looked, and there was this huge red belly black snake coming down the beach, just slowly making its way. And I said, "Oh my God, Violet," and I grabbed her and we ran over to it like as close, because they're quite a startly sort of snake. They don't like people and they'll run. And I did not run. They'll slither away. And I didn't want to disturb it. And I just got as close as we could. And I said, "Violet, watch this. It's going to get in the water and cross the river." And my husband said, "They swim?" And I said, "Yeah, the red bellies, they swim because they eat frogs and fish and stuff." And that's what it did. It got in the water and it swam across and it disappeared into the reeds. And I said, "Violet, you're never going to see that again. That's once in a lifetime what you just saw." And she was like, "Oh, cool." You know, um, yeah, red bellies are the eighth most venomous snake in the world. But they're really, I don't say this in the novel. In the novel, I make them out to be kind of menacing, but they're sort of very gentlemanly snake. I have
Uh,
encountered it a couple of times. I was walking along in the bush one time and I encountered one, and I saw it and it saw me, and we both went, "Oh, no, no, no." When we both went the other way. And I could just almost see the expression on the snake going, "Oh, no, thanks. No. Human." Yeah, great place.
So when I started the book, I literally checked twice to make sure that there wasn't a prequel or these characters didn't come from something else because they were so familiar. So if I'm missing something, where did they come from? This is
That's
just
so
the for me
nice.
question.
Yeah, no, that's so nice. That's a good thing. It probably makes me feel like, you saw them as being fully rendered. It's interesting with this novel. This novel actually started four different times, in four different ways. And it's interesting to me that I had such a struggle to start the book in the right way. And one of the things that my publisher, so I started how I wanted, which was with the birthday party, and Arthur arriving at the birthday party. And then it was suggested to me by my Australian publisher, no, I want to start with Russell and Evan when they were young. I want to get to know them a bit more before I invest in them emotionally. So then the start of the novel was Russell and Evan in the car where their dad turns up. And then my American agent said, no, I think we need to start. And you're in a crime scene, and you know that there's family conflict. So that's when I did a different start to this novel, which was the crime scene at the pub and Russell and Evan seeing each other for the first time. And then it was suggested, no, I want to start in a detached way, maybe with a prologue. And I was like, okay, I'll write a prologue. And I feel like this was a house that I was just trying to get into. And everyone was like, no, not that door, not that door, that door. And I was like, I just want to get in the house, please. So by the time I had started this novel, I was very familiar with who these guys are, and I had really thought about how to introduce them to you in a way that encouraged emotional investment, and a way that really showed you who they are. So, when you meet Russell for the first time, he's yelling at someone and they're yelling at him, "Ah!" And this is his whole life, that he's just fiery, and it's fun. It's fun fieriness, and I really enjoyed writing Russell because every time he opens his mouth he offends someone.
Yeah.
And I had the time and the space to think of the most awful thing that he could say, and the thing that would pop off the page and be unique as an insult. And then you meet Evan, and Evan is being yelled at for the first time, and threatened by his father. So I love to hear that you felt like you knew them already. That's feels like a good thing to me.
So could there be more on either side of this?
Well, I would love, sometimes I write novels and I think, I, I am done with that character. I know everything I want to know about that character. I wouldn't necessarily want to spend time with them again. But Russell and Bridie, I would definitely write again. They're so much fun. Russell and his daughter. And I feel like I left that novel just at the moment when Russell and Bridie was starting to learn about each other, and there was so much more to learn. So I would definitely write them again. And also, um, I think I would really enjoy those kinds of novels where someone gets to learn about their father. My father is kind of a mysterious figure, and I don't feel like I really know him, and I don't think I ever will. I don't think he's the kind of character who will show me who he really is deep down inside. So I'd like to continue that fantasy across all my novels. And what's wonderful about all of my novels, this is the 21st novel of mine that I've written. I'm almost into a second column on the inside of the book, which I think is super cool. You'll see these idealized parents. In my last novel High Wire, there's definitely an idealized mother figure, and in this there's an idealized father who wants to know you. and wants to see you and wants to be near you. And I try to be that mother to my daughter, Violet. And whenever I have to travel. I'm coming to the US and I'm also traveling all around Australia with Red Belly Crossing. And she's 6, and I said to her yesterday, I don't want to go away from you. I hope you know that. I don't want to go traveling around the country, talking to people and not being near you. All I want to do is be near you. And she goes, oh, yeah, yeah. You say that all the time. But I hope she carries that sentiment on into her adulthood to say my mother always wanted to be near me and there was no one else that she wanted to be near. So yeah.
I think
Did
Violet's a very lucky girl.
Thanks. I'm
did
trying. Yeah.
in the book, Brittany, she has a affinity to helping animals, and I did a little research into your background that you do some animal rescues too.
I
Is that
do.
is that intentional on your
Yeah.
part by
People say to me all the time, you need to do a kids series with animal rescue in it. And I'm like, yeah, I want to stick with my brand. I want to stick with crime fiction, but the animal rescue at the time of writing Red Belly Crossing was so intense as Violet has been doing animal rescue with me since she was 2. And I, have a little animal rescue hat and I ordered one for her. And we would turn up to places. I'd call ahead to see if the animal's still there or is it flown off or is it dead or whatever. And I'd say, I hope you don't mind bringing my supervisor. And then I'd turn up and there's this tiny little supervisor. And I'd catch the animal, put it in a basket, or sometimes it's a big wallaby. I'm holding the big wallaby and I'd throw the keys at Violet and I'd say, you drive. And she was like, Mom. And I was like, oh, that's right. No, sorry, I drive. And we had this whole gag that we would do. But yeah, it was getting to a stage where I was just kind of addicted and I was going out and doing rescues when Violet was at school because I just loved them. And I love I love that moment where something has happened to an animal and it's just lying there and it's like, I guess I'll die now. And I'm like, not today. You're coming with me. And it makes me feel like a hero to that animal, also the people that are around. I did this amazing rescue the other day where I saw the job. It just comes up on an app and it said um, duck, Muscovy duck on James Roos Drive. Now, I know that James Roos Drive is a massive, busy highway, and it said police attending. I'm like, this is serious. There's police there and all this kind of thing. And a Muscovy duck is not a native here. It's a domestic. So I knew this was someone's pet duck, and they're quite a big duck and they can fly. So I get there and it's 6 lanes of traffic and there's trucks and there's a concrete barrier all the way through the middle. So 3 and 3 trucks going by and there's this duck and it's standing on the concrete barrier. And as the wind is blowing it, all its feathers are getting ruffled and it was, I thought if this thing even tries to take off, it's going to get slammed right in the middle of, by a car or a truck or something. So it was like danger, and I got there and I pulled up in front of the police car that was next to the concrete barrier and I said, I'm animal rescue, and the cop got out of the car and he said, we tried to catch it, but it flew up onto that barrier. I said, yeah, they can fly. He goes, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, there's no real strategy. I'm going to try and grab it just the way that you did. But that's what I said. But in my mind, I was like, step aside, police. I am here to do my magic. Just excited and like all the cops are all looking at me like, what are we going to do? But then he said, all right, we're going to shut down the highway. And I was like, oh no, oh my God. And they shut it all down. And this is peak hour. So there's hundreds of cars all banking up. and the cops are there. Everyone's looking at me. I'm like, there's going to be a helicopter in a minute, and I'm in the middle of it. I'm like the hostage negotiator, and this duck is just standing there looking at me. And I thought, at any minute, it's going to fly off, and I'll never be seen again, and I'm going to look like the idiot who couldn't catch it. I thought if I reach for it, someone's probably filming. And anyway, I said to the cop, can you get on the other side of the concrete barrier, come around in front of the duck, and I want you to go like this with your hands so that it's looking at you and you're distracting it, and I'm going to come up from behind, I'm going to snatch it. And he goes, okay. And this cop is in full uniform with the flak jacket and the body cam and the hat and everything. He goes around and he's going like this. And the duck looked at him. So I crept along under the concrete barrier, and then I went snap, and I got it by the neck. And when I felt that duck's neck in my hand, I was like, yes, yes. And yeah, and then I got it, and then I just stuffed it under my arm like a handbag. And the cop goes, all right, let's go. And all of the traffic were released. And so he and I were just in the middle of this traffic, and I was patting the duck like this. And he said, oh, I didn't know it was friendly. And I said, yeah. He said, oh, it hissed at me. And I said, no, you can pat it if you want. So he was patting it. But it was just that moment was so great. When I got the duck, the cop went, whoa, like that. And I was like, oh, I'm a hero, sometimes it doesn't end like that. The duck does fly away, or you get there and the duck's dead, or you bring it home and then it dies, or it dies on the way to the vet, or whatever. There are so many sad stories in animal rescue, but there are moments that you go, I'm gonna remember this forever. And hopefully those ones that Violet and I have done together, where we're out on a boat trying to catch a sea eagle, or we're running through the bush trying to find this family of sugar gliders or whatever. Hopefully she remembers those and says, my mum had a sense of adventure and I was her co-pilot, I was her buddy cop partner in that. I hope she gets a sense of personal worth and confidence from that, hopefully.
Did the duck get home where it was
Oh,
supposed to go?
yeah. Well, I see the thing is people keep those muscovies and they don't realize that when they get old enough, they'll be able to fly. And often they're just not claimed. So I put it up on the internet and I said, does anybody own this duck? For ages, I give it about 10 days usually. Then at that time, I had clipped its wings, so it's just pottering around the driveway. And Violet's picking it up like a pillow and just walking with it because she tries to make obstacle courses for the animals to do, but they won't do them. And so there was a lot of that going on. Nobody claimed it, so I just rehomed it. I know I have a big duck network of people who take them and have them on farms and things. So it's out about an hour from here. It has a whole bunch of muscovy friends. It has a pond and I've rescued, so it's March now. I'm on my 102nd bird that I have rescued this year.
Oh, wow.
102 of them. Yeah, yeah. And that's everything from, I do a lot of domestics, a lot of dumped animals.
Yeah.
Roosters get dumped here a lot because you're not allowed to keep them in suburbia. And people dump ducks at parks and just expect them to go wild, whereas they don't. They don't know how to survive in the wild often.
Yeah.
And they don't adjust and they just sort of stand there going, help. And then somebody calls it in and I go and rescue and rehome them.
When I was doing some more research on your website, um, I saw where you did a road trip in the United States visiting crime scenes. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did. I came to the US with some very specific goals because my husband and I, we wanted to live abroad for a year, before we came back to Australia and, settled down and got married and had kids. So we honeymooned over there. We he proposed to me on the pier, Santa Monica Pier,
Mm.
in California, and then we did the whole east coast of the US. When I moved over there, and then we lived in LA for a year, I had big dreams. I wanted to call 911, and in a separate incident, I wanted to be part of a crowd, and something happens, and I'm the person who goes, "Somebody call 911." And I wanted to be pulled over by a highway sheriff who comes up with the aviator glasses, and I wanted to roll down the window and say, "What seems to be the problem, officer?" You just can't do those things here. And so within 6 months, I had done all three of those things, and I needed new goals. And so when we did our honeymoon, I had all these body dumping and serial killer and famous, cold case sites that I wanted to go to. And so, yeah, I made Tim traipse through the bush to find this body dumping site because it was a particular distance from a road, and somebody said they just stumbled across this body, and I was like, I want to go there, and I want to see for myself how far it is and decide whether he just stumbled across it or not. And Tim was fine with that, as long as we could do all the things he wanted to do in the US, which mainly was to visit dive bars and to watch the baseball. He's a big baseball fan, and we did all of those things as well. We love America. We love American people, and we've been all over. And a lot of it was sitting in bars and talking to the local bartender. When we lived in LA, we were invited to the family Thanksgiving of four different bartenders.
Oh
And I
wow.
said to Tim, "We are alcoholics. What is happening here?" We ended up with five different invites to Thanksgivings, but four of them were bartenders. So you can tell how much time we spent watching the baseball in bars.
Do you have as many? So, like, and this has nothing to do with the books, but now I'm on it.
Yeah, yeah.
So like where you're from compared to the US, like there are so many different cultures depending on where you are. Like even in my state, Kentucky, you will find things that are very specific to different regions. Is it like that where you're at too?
Absolutely not. No, it's pretty, I've found in the US you could go from one state to another and meet completely different people, and the vibe is different, and even the weather feels different as
Mhm.
you drive from one state to another in the US. It's just a melting pot of all kinds of different cultures, and that's what looking from afar, I imagine it's incredibly difficult to make, political policies which cover everyone, in this entire nation of very diverse people. There are state by state here in Australia, there are differences, but essentially it's, people from Melbourne get this reputation of being, oh, they're super posh, they're from Melbourne, they like their coffee. They say it's a European city in Australia, Melbourne, and people from Queensland are supposed to be a bit more hard knocks, old fashioned, conservative, and people from Sydney are supposed to be, but depending on what side of Sydney you're from. I'm from Western Sydney, and people are like, "Oh, you're a Westie, you're from out the back, you're rough and public school and all this." And you go to the beach, and it's like, "Oh, Eastern beaches, posh. Oh yes," and the accent, and you can see the plastic surgery as you're driving. You can see it on people's faces from the car, and that's 40 minutes drive. But not it. Yeah, the difference is not the way that it is in the US, those stark differences, and the accents, you really can't distinguish the accents here in Australia.
Huh. Yeah, I'm in Tennessee, which it's in the South, but and and the eastern part of the state here is all mountains, and where I'm at is all farmland.
Uh-huh.
Outside of a few cities, there's a
Yeah.
couple of big like Nashville. Everybody's heard of Nashville and
Mm.
Memphis, which we have barbecue. But outside of those, over in the eastern part of the state, it's the mountains. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah.
here we have a lot of farmland. So
I have not been to Tennessee. I'd like to go to Tennessee. I'd
Tennessee's
like to
fun.
go there and play an acoustic guitar and look at those mountains and do Tennessee type things and hear the accents. The accents are so beautiful, and I'm also one of those people who picks up accents. So I start talking in a very, I've got the Australian accent, but just a whisper of whatever state I'm in, and people hear me and they're like a dog cocking their ear, going, "What the hell are you? What are you saying?" Yeah, I remember being in where was I? I think I was in Maine and I was at a bar and I said to the lady, "Can I just have a water?" And she goes, "A what?" I said, "A glass of water." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Water." And she goes, "Oh, water." A glass of water. Okay, here. Yeah. But I know that the way that I say water is very Western Sydney. WADUH water.
Wh- One of the things we have here is Teresa may call it pop, but it's either in Tennessee, everything's a Coke.
A
And
Coke.
it doesn't matter what brand it is, it's a
Yeah.
Coke.
It's a
And but if you get out of Tennessee, it's a pop or a soda or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, just give me a Coke. That's fine. One more little thing about the book, and then we'll move on to some fun quick fire type questions. Um, Dodge, will he ever get his own series?
That would be great. I think I would. It I it sounds very mercenary, but I definitely would write Russell and Bridie again. I definitely would have Dodge appear in it. I would be very curious to see whether anyone is ever brave enough to get into a romantic relationship with Russell and how terribly that would go in another novel now that he is sort of ready for that. But the fact is that I at the moment I'm selling my books in Hollywood, the rights to my books. For such an amount and well before they hit the shelves and those rights once the company has bought book one they kind of own the characters so I would definitely write them again but financially it's sensible for me to keep doing standalones.
Oh,
My novel series Crimson Lake which has a detective in it who has faced this horrible allegation, which he's innocent of abducting and sexually assaulting a teenage girl. He's fled to Cairns, and he's rebuilding his life there, and he meets a very strange woman named Amanda, and they solve crimes together. That series, the Crimson Lake series, I get about one letter a week of people saying, "Is there going to be a book four? Is there going to be a book four?" And I really ache to write some of these characters again. And I think eventually I will. I'll just say I need to stop making financial decisions with these books and give the people what they want and what I want too. But I'm also trying to build a future for Violet and for myself
yeah.
and that kind of thing. So I would like to. And the other thing is, with this book, and we haven't talked that much about it because we've been talking about all kinds of stuff, and I've really enjoyed it. But there is the true crime aspect of this. This is a book that tries to do something I've never done before. It takes a real life case here in Sydney where two women were murdered in their homes in Sydney's eastern beaches and it reimagines those crimes and puts them in Red Belly Crossing, in a small mysterious town. And in the afterward, I call upon the reader to see whether they know anything about these true crime cases. And in the process of that, I met with the families of Lynette White and Maria Smith and I sought their permission to do this. And I would be open to doing that again because meeting these families and giving them, Lynette's husband Paul says this might be the last roll of the dice because he's in his 80s. This crime happened 53 years ago. I would like to give other families a roll of the dice with my novels, with my art, with my platform to highlight, some cases and see whether people know something. Because I know something about crime fiction readers, that
Yeah.
they are puzzle driven, that they're motivated, that they like, picking apart mysteries. And I never met a crime fiction reader who wasn't heavily invested in true crime. So I feel like in this novel, I've lured everyone to the afterward, and then I go, surprise, here's a crime. Do you know anything about it? And I would be open to doing that again. I don't know whether it would be with Russell and Brady and people like Dodge, but yeah, we'll see what the future holds, I think.
Yeah.
I definitely like to.
Yeah. When
I
I
think
read,
you're right about what you said about the readers. Like, I mean, I will go down rabbit holes if I even have an inkling that something is happening. Gotta go and off and I'll try and figure it out.
Yeah, I am that insufferable wife who tells my husband everything that's going on with a particular case, and I follow it through the courts, and I get up in the morning and I say, so this is what happened. So the trial, the judge said, and the worst I was at it was with the submarine tragedy. That wasn't a crime, but being that insufferable updating wife, I was like, so they've heard noises under the sea, and it's been this many hours, and Tim's like, with his morning coffee, he's like, could we get till after 10 p.m., 10 a.m. before we start talking about dead people? Because sometimes I come in there and they're like, they found three bodies, one of them has no head, and he's like, okay, toast and coffee first, then the dead people. He's a very understanding husband, Tim.
Do you have a case in mind that you would like to cover next if you do this again?
There are so many. There's a website called the Doe Network. If you have a look at that, it is every crime writer's dream because it's essentially a database which is searchable by chronology and by area of the world, and it has thousands upon thousands upon thousands of missing and assumed murdered people. And sometimes, if I'm uninspired, I just scroll through there. It's almost like spinning a wheel. I go, da, 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 and I pick a tiny photo of someone's face that I sort of look at their face and I go, I want to know what happened to you. And there was a case in there, and I won't say, because I haven't talked to this family and I haven't, asked their permission. But there was a case where two parents took their three kids camping, mum and dad, and mum disappeared in the middle of the night, and dad just did nothing about it. He just took the kids home, and about a week later, he said to the police, "Oh, my wife went missing, and we were camping, and we were sort of around that area, kind of, and it's so clear to me what happened, and I can't stop thinking about those kids who are adults now, and do they have a relationship with that father? Do they sort of say, why did you wait a week to report mum missing, and what happened? And I'm very interested in that. And that seems to be one of those cases where I think someone would know something and they would not be saying. And but on the Doe Network, there are thousands and thousands and thousands. And sometimes it's just unidentified human remains found in the desert, and there's a pair of pink shoes and a handbag and skeletal remains. And I think, who were you, and what happened to you, and how did you get there? And like, it's endless. It's endless.
Mhm.
And that's the thing, though, is I would have, if I was ever going to do this overtly and say this is the case, I would have to approach those families and say, is this okay? Because when I approached Paul and Stephen, Um, I came in saying to them, increasing your pain in any way by doing this is my worst nightmare. So you're going to have to let me know
Yeah.
if you feel exploited or, and it was very hard because I said to them, in this book you're going to meet the killer and they're going to get what they deserve, and you may never get that in real life. And also in this case you're going to meet a character who is essentially you, and he's going to get his closure. And and there were two husbands, and in the novel I had to reduce them to one because I couldn't have these two separate scenes where you meet one husband then you go and meet the other husband. I reduced you guys to one, and he has freedoms that you never had. Lynette and Maria were murdered in their apartments, and Paul and Stephen ended up moving out and selling those apartments because they couldn't live there. Financially and emotionally they couldn't live there, whereas this character, I needed him to still live there where it happened so that the detectives could be in that space. And so I adjusted what happened to these real life people. And I said, is that okay? And they eventually, Stephen said, I think you're a little bit too concerned with how we feel about this. And I said, how you feel about this is kind of the whole point. So yeah, it's been an amazing and very meaningful experience. And it's maybe one of the most important books I've ever written, this one.
I got one more, Scott.
No, you're fine.
Um, for someone like me who has just found you,
Uh-huh.
what would you say would be the next book? Like, Teresa, don't miss this. This is the one I want you to read next.
People talk about my first novel ever, Hades, uh, still, after 12 years and 21 novels, they still go, "Oh, I remember when I read Hades." And they talk about where they were. They say, I was sitting on my porch, or they say, oh, my mum gave it to me. And they talk about it like it was this pinnacle moment in their lives, which is so, it just makes me feel wonderful when they do that. And no book seems to have taken over in their minds, for this one. This I did something there that really touched people. So that one maybe. And then also I'm incredibly proud of Crimson Lake and what Crimson Lake has done. It was made into the TV show Troppo with Thomas Jane, and I went to the set and I saw these places that I had written about in the novel. I saw the bar and I saw Ted's house, and in that there's a little bit of animal rescue in that novel as well, because um, Ted rescues a family of geese, and then he's like, what the hell am I supposed to do with these? I don't know anything about birds, and it's really hard for him. And so I was there, and Thomas Jane said to me, why did it have to be geese? Why couldn't it have been cats? And I said, because I was trying to be different. I'm sorry. He's like, they're so loud. you know we had to have a goose trainer on set, and he had to be holding the little babies and things like that. So yeah, so it was good. So maybe that one, if you feel like looking back at my other work.
Yeah. What's it like to write with James Patterson?
Brilliant. Really, really an education in writing a particular type of novel, writing a type of novel that people will read in 8 hours, and they won't eat and they won't sleep and they won't go to the bathroom, because that's what Patterson novels pride themselves on, is that plot that really goes like a freight train.
Mhm.
And he's a lovely person as well. We've had to spend hours upon hours on the phone across those 9 novels that we wrote. And we have a lot in common. I didn't know that we would have a lot in common, because he's over there in Florida, and he's the world's biggest writer, and I'm here in, in Northwest Sydney, and um we've lived incredibly different lives, but in some ways we have lived similar lives. He fancies himself, I think, as a bit of a scrapper, a bit of a rags to riches story, and I'm the same as well. I think I was 12 when my mother found me a laptop on the council cleanup, and that's when I started writing. Essentially, she got me a laptop out of a dumpster, and this thing, I had to leave it plugged into the wall, and I had it on my lap, and it would get hotter and hotter and hotter, and then it would make a crack noise and zap me in the legs. And that's what I was writing my first novel on, at 12. And now I'm traveling the world and signing autographs and things like that. And so Jim and I have lived kind of similar lives in that way, where we came and now we're sort of looking at ourselves and going, wow, how did this happen? So it's good. It's been really good. They're very different novels, his novels to mine.
Yeah.
I'm very character heavy, and I'd like you to really get emotionally invested in these people. And there's always sort of a personal problem going on in all of my novels in that downtime between, so and I believe in that way. If you're heavily invested in those characters, the two storylines will meet at some point. There will be some relationship crisis and there will be some plot crisis. And if those two things are smashing together at the end of the novel at the same time, it makes for really emotional stakes. So, yeah.
If our viewers and listeners want to locate you on social media, what platforms are you on, and um, what are your handles?
Oh, okay. I have to think. So on Facebook, I'm Candice Fox author. And on Instagram, I think I'm Candice Fox author as well, or Candice Fox books. On Substack, I have a newsletter called Fox Around and Find Out, um, where I just give like sort of monthly updates on what I'm doing. There's a lot of animal rescue around because I just find that so fun, showing people what is in my garage. I have to keep all the birds in my garage because I have a dog who hates all birds in the house. So I'm down in my garage in usually in my robe, in my bed robe. I've gone down there to see who's alive and who's dead, and I make a little video and say, "Oh look, he survived the night,"
Mhm.
So there's content on there that is not just writing and book related. All of my fans are still talking at the moment about something called the duckening, which is where I ended up rescuing 37 Peking duck eggs from a guy who was in crisis. He wrote to me on the internet and he said, I have all these eggs and they're hatching and I don't know what to do. I was going to sell them as cooking eggs and now there's ducks everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, put them in an Uber. I'm sending an Uber for them now. And I Ubered all of these eggs that were hatching and these tiny ducklings that were falling out and getting cold and almost dying. Violet and I were running around in this sea of golden ducklings, all like piranhas swarming on the food and then spreading out and then washing around, and it was madness. So everybody enjoyed that so much that I said, right, okay, I'm gonna give you people what you want, and I'm gonna give you more animal content. So
You mentioned that you'll be at Thriller Fest.
yeah.
Will you be doing any signings outside of Thriller Fest while you're in the United States?
Well, I'll be at Thriller Fest, and then I will on May 4th. I will be at the Poison Pen bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
We have not lined up any LA events, but if anyone is interested in hosting me in LA, I will be there May 12th, May 11th and May 12th. But something may come up. I'm not sure. I have a whole bunch of meetings that I have to do there, TV meetings and things. But yes, Thriller Fest is going to be amazing. I'm on a panel with Meg Gardner and David Baldacci. So I saw that the graphic that they made for that. And I was right in the middle with David Baldacci and Meg Gardner. And I was like, eek, what's gonna happen? Yeah, so I'm excited by that. I'm also running a class on how to start your novel, like a master class. And I
Okay.
know that from starting Red Belly Crossing 4 ways wrongly. So I'm going to tell you what I've learned and what I think. And I think it's particularly relevant in the age of atten attention spans being divided. How do you get people into your novel, and particularly agents and publishers that you're wanting to take your novel? How do you get them in a way in those first couple of paragraphs? Because I really believe that's all you've got these days before people click away.
And I do want to say the, I guess it's the Australian cover blows the American cover out of the water. I
Oh,
really,
really?
I really do like the Australian cover. It's very pretty.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I have it here actually. Oh, here's one I prepared earlier. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's all embossed and everything, but I really like I also really like the American one. I like how they've spread red belly out going on there. And I kind of fought for that title a little bit because there was a feeling that people in the US don't know what a red belly is. And I thought, well, you're about to learn. So hopefully there's something intriguing about that. But I think both covers are very pretty. Mine's backwards. I don't know how you got yours going forwards, but there you go. Yeah.
Yours is straight on my end. It
Oh, is
shows.
it? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
I'll
Um,
zoom. I don't know.
but I had no idea that what the title inferred when I picked up or requested a copy of this from um, Crooked Lane. I just said, and then I didn't realize it was in Australia,
Mm.
and it took me a bit to get used to the lingo. There, you know, it's I like a publican. I was telling Teresa, I was like, do you know what a publican is? And I was like, she's like, no. I was like, it's a person that owns a pub, you know, and and what do you call gamblers? What are they?
Yeah.
What is it that you call gamblers? People that are betting, punters.
Punters.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that just
Yeah.
it was, but it was a learning curve. But it was a great learning curve because this is a nonstop thriller. I think really really good. So
Excellent. Thank you, Scott.
yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Do you have anything else, Teresa? Because
Nope.
we're approaching an hour, and my my wife is going to have a whole. She'll have a lot of fun trimming this one down. I don't know how much she'll be able to trim down because there's a lot of talking in this one. So, but
Oh, well, there we
again,
go. That's okay.
uh, thank you again for joining us. I look forward to reading your next book. But for everybody that's reading or tuning in, Red Valley Crossing is available April the 28th in the United States. And
Mhm.
when is it available in the Australia?
The first, April
Uh,
the 1st.
April the
But
1st.
people have already got it. The diehards have already got it. I don't know if they held up a truck at gunpoint or something, but people had copies of it before I did.
Oh,
So
wow. That's
yeah,
crazy.
I don't encourage that kind of violence. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all have a
All
good
right.
one. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.